Good morning. I am Maria Cadbury from Persollo, a social e-commerce and AI-powered influencer marketing analytics platform. You can run a one-click checkout on your social and influencer marketing activity, run an influencer affiliate campaign, and enjoy live AI-powered social media post analyzer, deep insights into your influencers. Thank you for joining me this morning, our third in a series of Influencer Marketing of the Moment webinars. And we'll be talking about influencer marketing, ethics, influencers, and growth. I'm genuinely excited about today's incredible content. The series also charts the COVID stages. As we started our first webinar, Influence for Good and Social Purpose, just days after lockdown, while now we're coming out of the COVID-19 lockdown and the world outside our window resembles a normal as before. This time, however, we think about equality and support a global uprising for all gender and ethnicity. In the influencer marketing space, we dive into the world of ethics and the tremendous rise of virtual influencers and the continued growth of influencers and how they consider ethics, brand safety, and transparency. We'll hear from Dudley Nevill Spencer from the virtual influencer agency and Live and Breed, who has built virtual influencers for brands. In his talk, we'll go deep into the practice of making influencers, and we'll also fireside with Dudley. We'll also fireside with Sydney Fashion Kids, a real life influencer, and Nat from Fly Academy, who takes us through the model of how we, you and I, become business influencers to drive business growth. For me, it's the curious ethics around making virtual influence, where with the data, you can set the tone of an influencer, and that tone of voice is the exact tone to instill trust in the consumer. That's great if it's Nike selling their latest kicks. But who else is making and using virtual influencers? In our panel, I'll get the quiz Dudley on influencers like little Michaela, who I'm personally obsessed with. She refers to herself as a change maker robot and promotes #BlackLives. What's incredible about little Michaela is that the company behind her brood is now worth 125 million thanks to a new round of financing the company is currently closing. Another growing trend, investment in the virtual influencer space, which is not too surprising when you see the success of Michaela as a marketing tool. She's featured endorsements for streetwear and luxury brands. She's working with Calvin Klein and Prada. She's over 2.4 million followers. She's famous among the famous and releasing single after single. Keep watching this space. If we look at the influencer market itself, it's now a 1 billion industry, and there is a strong prediction that the next year or two it'll rise to 1.5 billion, which I'm strongly backing that prediction. What's interesting is that the International Data Corporation has predicted that the worldwide spending on artificial intelligence is set to hit or exceed 35 billion. Balmain commissioned the former fashion photographer Cameron James Wilson to create a virtual army of digital models. Coca-Cola and Louis Vuitton have used video game characters in their ads. Soul Machines, a company founded by Oscar-winning digital animator Mark Segal, produced computer-generated teachers that respond to human students. Last month, YouPorn got in on the trend with JD Vales, an avatar who promotes the site and interacts with its users, the darker side of the coin. Let's look at stats from a survey by a company called TBH Marketing on Gen Z and influencers. 32% they said they followed CGI influencers as a strong and helpful advice. 55% said they had made a purchase as a result of doing so. 53% had followed a brand as a result, and 52% had researched a brand or product. On the other hand, 42% of Gen Z or millennial users had followed digital influencers without realizing they weren't a real person. And we'll dive into the ethics of this. To engage consumers on an expanding digital ecosystem, with the average consumer now has 7 social media accounts, up from 3 in 2012, stats from Global Wire Index. We are seeing influencer marketing not only now has a staple in our marketing strategies, it plays an integral role in the cross-channel marketing efforts. In our last webinar, We heard from Inca, Group M's influencer marketing agency, The Fifth, News UK's influencer marketing agency, and Mass Reform, who all discussed the rise of the omni-channel. And today we'll hear from Gleam. Gleam was the very first talent agency in the UK, and Chris will discuss how they view the omni-channel and the role of the influencer in the wider marketing strategy. This space is definitely hotting up. Another trend that was picked up when talking to Das from Inca was the use of influencers becoming consultants, advising brands on how to create content for the target audience. Today we'll talk to Imagine and we'll look at the rise of Gen Z consultants, where they work with brands and how to communicate with the Gen Z audience. But for me, it's also where we pick up on the progress behind the business and how they really tick the box on diversity and inclusion, and we'll talk to more about that in their talk. We'll finish up today with the remarkable Susie Moore. She's an author, life coach, and business influencer. Today she'll guide us on the principle and the permission to move forward and grow your business. 3 things you have complete control over right now. I feel this is a great juxtaposition, everything we're talking about. Susie's latest book is called Stop Checking Your Likes and Shake the Need for Approval and Live an Incredible Life. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I'm genuinely excited about yet another stellar lineup for today's webinar. Before I hand over to our fantastic Scott, I will take you through the agenda. So I'll just get that up on my screen. And then do some technology magic where I can share my screen to you. Here we go. Fantastic. So next up, Scott, who is our fantastic voice of the space, and he's going to take us through why doing good is good for business. Then we'll move on to the interview with Dudley on virtual influencers, use of data, likability, sales ethics. Dudley will move on to the next fireside and be joined with Yvonne, who's from Sydney Fashion Kids. She may or may not join us because she's had a little accident with her little kid. Everything's fine, but that's just an FYI. But Natalie is definitely joining us from Fly Academy, so that's going to be another awesome fireside. We'll have a short break of 5 minutes, and then we will kick off with Jay and Kat from Imagine, and that's where we talk about the rise of Gen Z and the impact with brands. Then following that, Chris, as I mentioned, he's with Gleam, and Gleam is the very first talent agency, and they have grown and progressed, so it's really fascinating to see the developments there. And he's going to talk about ethics at the heart and striving new developments. And then we've already mentioned Susie Moore and the book that she's going to take us through. So now I'm really excited about another fantastic talk, and we have our amazing Scott who's going to join us. And just moving him in here. Hello. Just unmuting you.
Nice. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, Maria. Thank you for the preamble. Good morning to everyone tuning in wherever you are, in your offices or still in lockdown. Yeah, I'll crack on. I'm going to talk for 10 to 15 minutes just on setting the scene for ethics within influencer marketing. And as Maria just said, why doing good is good for business. So let me just that in mind. So Maria, can you just confirm that you can see the full screen?
I can see absolutely perfect. You're looking good.
All right, we're off to the races then.
Yep.
Right, so there's no massive surprise that we're all here. We're logged into this webinar because we know that influencer marketing works, and just some numbers behind that. Influencer marketing is enjoying a compound interest growth rate of between 40 and 50% year on year. It's up from 500 million in 2015, trending at about 10 billion this year, and spend could be about 15 billion in 2022. So that's 20 times the size it was 5 years ago. Social media is now the dominant brand discovery channel for under 23-year-olds, so Brand Z, and I'm looking forward to hearing why Generation Z is different to Millennials later in this morning, because there's a huge difference, and I'd like to tap into some experts on why they say that. and we say that today's Generation Z turns to Instagram before anywhere else when it's doing some research on a brand or a service. And social media is more popular than Googling a product. And then transition is intergenerational as well. So it starts with Gen Z, but it runs the whole way up. So 1 in 3 of us, 31%, say that the main reason for going on social media now is to find and research products. That's according to Global Web Index. And when we're on social media, we're 3 times more likely to follow an influencer than we are to follow a brand directly. And then when we do follow an influencer, we then go on to tell 4 of our friends or relatives about that product or service that that influencer has been promoting. So influencer marketing works. Let's see if I can just get on to the next slide. Right. So influencer marketing works because as consumers, we enjoy branded content. We can see that on TikTok, 30% of 16 to 24-year-olds have been swayed to buy a product through seeing some influencer-generated content on TikTok. On Instagram, we can see that 38% of 25 to 34-year-olds, again, are swayed to make a purchase through seeing Instagram content, influencer-generated content on Instagram. And again, on YouTube, 37% of 25 to 34-year-olds are swayed to make a purchase based on seeing some influencer-generated content on those platforms. So this is just setting the scene. Influencer-generated content works, and that's why we're here. That's why we're in the business of influencer marketing. But there are 3 provisos on our love affair for influencer marketing and influencer-generated content. The content stream can't be ad after ad after ad after ad after ad. There's got to be a ratio, a nice ratio of organic to editorial content, organic rather to paid for sponsored content. Probably 1 in 3, better still 1 in 4. 1 ad to every 4 bits of organic content. 2, the content is going to give us something. It's got to add some value to our lives in some way. It's going to be inspirational or aspirational. It's going to be educational or entertaining. There's got to be some value in that. And it's going to be honest and transparent. If it's an ad, it's going to be obviously identifiable as an ad. And that's, that's really what I sort of try and dig into a little bit now. But sometimes standards are laid out in regulation. In the UK, advertisers self-regulate through the Advertising Standards Authority, whilst the government watchdog, the Competition and Markets Authority, ensures that consumers are protected. So at a regulatory level, there are rules and regulation. Influencer marketing obviously exists because people with influence publish content and comment to social media platforms. And again, these platforms have their own policies of what they deem to be acceptable and not acceptable. And we can see the furore around Facebook at the moment, and the way they're treating content is forcing advertisers to shy away from that platform. So that goes on to the next stage, where there are standards set out by professional bodies, the IAB, the BCMA, the CIPR, all these other initialed bodies have their own codes of conduct and their own codes of ethics, the way they ascribe that their members should behave both to their clients and to society at large. Companies have their own standards too, their values and their culture, the way they do things, the behaviors, the beliefs they see as acceptable and not acceptable. And then at a personal level, we all have our own standards. They are the inbuilt, they're their personal set of codes. We have our own moral compass, this sense of knowing that we're doing the right thing in the right way, for the right reasons. And there's an interplay. It's not a cascade effect, but there's an interplay here. And again, I've just talked about Facebook a little bit, and its policies. And that's because individuals have gathered together and they say, we don't like the way that Facebook is behaving at the moment. And so they're reacting by not buying from brands that advertise on Facebook. So that again has an impact on the platforms. So it might be top down, but it's also bottom up. It's knowing the right things to do for the right reasons, and do it in the right way. And that's what I want to spend the next, I suppose, 5 or 10 minutes explaining why doing good is good for business. So here we see that on the right, we've got Ava Louise, who did the coronavirus challenge back in March by licking a lavatory seat in an airplane in Miami. And again, on the left, we see one of the appalling Paul brothers. Here's Jake Paul, and he was exposed recently for falsely claiming that he'd raised $32,000 for the Black Lives Matter movement. Influencers obviously have a moral obligation beyond a legal requirement. There's a moral obligation to do the right thing for their followers, and these are the people who have made them influential in the first place. There's a moral obligation and a commercial incentive, on the other hand, for marketers to protect their audiences, the people who buy their products. So from a brand safety point of view, we as marketers need to undertake sufficient due diligence in which to ensure that we limit any exposure to influencers and their content which doesn't pass the smell test. But on the positive side, finding influencers whose values chime with those of our brands and the brands that we represent builds a tighter affinity with the customer and the company. So here, it's an age-old thing that best of practice, best of breed. There's an important procedure in the vetting process. But what I'm trying to get here is that the ethical dimension goes far beyond data alone. Data is hugely important, obviously, but there's a contextual intelligence with the practitioners on working out, are these influencers the right fit? They might have the right size of audience. The audience might map nicely in terms of where the audience resides globally, the male female percentage, the average age of the audience. That all might map nicely, but do their values chime with those of your brands, and more importantly, the customers that you're trying to reach. Here, I just want to emphasize that we don't like content that is manipulated. We don't like overly photoshopped content here. And here's Johanna Olsson. She's born in Sweden, but now travels around taking pictures around the world as a fashion influencer. And I'm not sure if you can see at home that she seems to be floating slightly above this bridge in Paris over the River Seine. This is an old picture. This is back from October 2018. It's an oldie, but I think it's a goodie. So here Johanna was paid to visit Paris, but apparently she didn't like the resulting background shots and decided to Photoshop in better backgrounds than the Parisian backgrounds she was offered. So here she appears to be hovering over the bridge. There's a backlash, and Johanna published an Instagram story trying to explain what happened, and that didn't go down very well either for her. So it's poor judgment by Olsson. Their activation tarnished her brand, but more importantly, as marketers, her activation tarnished the sponsoring brand association as well. So the message here is that we don't like to feel duped through image manipulation. But that doesn't mean that all instances of photoshopping are bad or unethical. Here's an example of Brita water filters. And last year they played with the notion that travel influencers often Photoshop in, remove clouds from the scene and make the ocean really crystal clear and blue, and the sands a beautiful yellow. And here they played with that notion, and they actually put in a whole lot of debris into the Photoshop. So actually, the photoshopped image is the one on our left. And they did this to really stop our thumb from scrolling past on Instagram. And they did that. They wanted to sell Brita water filters. That's what they do. But they also wanted to highlight the plight of the oceans through single-use plastic. So it doesn't mean that all image manipulation is bad. And then they flagged up that what they had done. They flagged it up as an image manipulation. But by that stage, your thumb had already stopped and you'd already had a look at that piece of content. Right. So far, we focused on influencers making questionable judgment calls, but influencers are influencers are media brands in their own right. They've built corporate values as well as personal beliefs around doing the right thing, the right way, for the right reason. And we've seen plenty of influencers answering the call from the World Health Organization and from United Nations to carry messaging around the coronavirus. And they've done that pro bono. And even pre the coronavirus, we see that the PR Week's global award winner for influencer marketing campaign was to promote blood donors in Germany. And again, influencers in Germany worked on a pro bono. So I'm not suggesting at all that influencers are the bad guys here. There are bad guys and there are good guys. Just as in marketing, there are those that that go out of their way to manipulate influencers and manipulate consumers as well. So it's maneuvering our way through the industry. That's the important message here. And professional influencers understand the delicate balance they tread between their audience and the sponsoring brand. And increasingly, influencers are calling out industries and companies who they don't feel measure up to their own society's expectations. So Black Lives Matter movement is gathering momentum now, and for all the wrong reasons, but there's a positive that's coming out of the horrors that we've seen in the US. This isn't new, sadly. This has been going on for generation. And I was asked to speak last summer in Italy, and then later in the year at the Influencer Marketing Show, about ethics in influencer marketing. And here's a great example back from, we can see that the timestamp from May last year from Stephanie. And she had a rallying cry to her followers on Twitter here saying, "Hi, I'm going to do a thing. If you come across any photos or stories of campaigns or events that only feature white influencers, let me know." She's going to do a thing. And true to her word, a couple of weeks later, she published a long article in the Metro. The headline here: "By only using white influencers, brands are telling Black women we don't belong." And here's a pull-out quote as well. "By exclusively using white," let's just see if I can get it on my notes here. I can't see the side screen. There we go. "By exclusively using white influencers to tout holiday experiences, the story being told is that these experiences are only available to white people. Only white slim women go on holiday. This needs to stop." So again, we've seen, influencers doing the right thing, brands doing the right thing, and increasingly consumers expecting brands to do the right thing and expecting the influencers they follow to do the right thing too. And influencers grasping the metal and challenging brands that don't measure up to what they believe are society's norms. Here's another example of influencers have called out specific companies where they don't feel that these companies have passed a smell test. So Stephanie there was calling out an industry. She was calling out the hospitality industry. This here is an example of brands actually being called out. So here's Daniella Perkins. She was invited to Coachella last year in a brand collaboration with fashion app Dote. Daniella felt she was treated differently to other white influencers and uploaded a vlog to YouTube about her experiences. The video was has so far gained almost 1 million views. She moved, and I think importantly here, this was so moved, her video so moved Kpis that she uploaded her own vlog and has gained 400,000 views on YouTube so far. And the important thing to note is that Kpis doesn't know Daniella. She wasn't part of the brand collaboration. She wasn't at Coachella, but she was very moved by Daniella's story. So the story lived on from Daniella to Kpis, and then it was picked up by BuzzFeed, who pulled the story again into the mainstream media. So the story kept on growing for this company, Dote. And it's an example of if you don't live the values that your audiences, that your customers expect, you will increasingly get found out. So I'm just going to end on a few slides just with some stats that sort of back up this feeling. So 66% of influencers admit to feeling increasingly pressured by brands to contravene industry guidelines. This is up from 55% last year. So if we go back to the opening slides, we remembered that we love, as consumers, we love influencer marketing generated content, but on the proviso that we don't feel hoodwinked and that, into thinking that it's organic content was actually paid for content. And we're seeing here that increasingly brands are trying to force their influencers to not uphold the compliance. We've seen here. We also know that 57% of the public are annoyed when the media or internet content is too advertising driven. Again, that was one of the provisos. We don't mind. In fact, we love influencer generated content. But we don't like it to be ad after ad after ad after ad, and 57% said they were annoyed by it. 61% of women said they don't engage with an influencer's sponsored content if it doesn't feel genuine. Again, we don't like to feel hoodwinked. This is one of the core tenets of influencer marketing, that it has to be authentic. 86% said they're likely to take their business to a competitor if there's a lack of transparency on social. And 67% said they would unfollow an influencer if they found out they'd dramatically misrepresented themselves, their lifestyle and their followers. So, if if being morally correct or doing the right thing doesn't float your boat, then follow where the money is. And here are the stats that follow that doing the right thing sort of pays dividends. 72% of Generation Z factor in the company's purpose when shopping. This age group includes purpose as part of an internal checklist. 93% said that if a company makes a commitment, it should have the appropriate programs and policies in place to back up that commitment. So it's not just enough to say, Black Lives Matter, or for example, it's about doing something with that. It's about affecting a change. 75% of Gen Z research a company to ensure it is being honest when it takes a stand on its issues. So to close, we should, at the top there's the regulatory do's and don'ts laid down by the CMA in the UK and the ASA, and that filters right the way down to the individual. Our moral compass about doing the right things for the right reasons. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's a cascade effect, because when we bandy together as consumers, we can force brands to change, we can force platforms to change. And that was me. Hopefully I stood to my 15 minutes.
You were great, Scott, as always. I really do agree with you in the moral compass. It's such an important part, and we look at when people get it right or wrong. I have to say, I thought like last year, M&S and John Lewis, they both had fantastic squads where they had women of white, black, brown, I don't know about every spectrum, but they also had older, younger girls and different shapes. And that's what we need represented today. So yeah, it's nice seeing this uprising.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's when you sit down and look at it, it's absurd that it hasn't been happening, you know, for hundreds of years. But it is happening slowly, but it is happening. And as I say, you know, whether it is because of an ethical understanding, or whether it is because that's what consumers demand. Now, you know, brands must adapt to answer the frustrations of their audiences.
Totally, naturally. Well, Scott, it's been fantastic, and we're going to cue in here Dudley, who's going to join us for his interview fireside. Here he is. Hello. Thanks, Scott, and hello, Dudley.
Hey, Scott, thanks for taking my time away, over talking as usual.
No problem. There's got to be some good content this morning.
yeah, that's what mumbles.
Very good. Well, Dudley, it's absolutely great to have you here. And just for everybody else, Dudley works with the Virtual Influence Marketing and Agency and Live and Breed. And so I'm going to dive into the questions straight away. What I'm keen to know is, do you build influencers for brands?
Yes. Yeah. So that's our primary purpose. I mean, that's where we see a huge amount of growth. Virtual influencer agency focuses just on creating virtual influencers specifically for brands or avatars, which I'll go into. And we are part of a company called Live and Breathe, which is a traditional integrated marketing agency, which also does a lot of shopper marketing as well. So there's a nice kind of connection between the two, because virtual influencers are effectively becoming brand devices. But I mean, there are really three kinds of VIs, if you want me to explain the three different kinds.
I'd love to.
So the first one is effectively an avatar, so something like a customer sales representative. So something like Jamie from ANZ Bank, where you go onto the website, she talks to you, you can ask her questions, and she will help you with your account, tell you how much money's in there, that kind of thing. So that's really a customer service device. There's also a couple of those that a few makeup companies have, and a couple of airlines. Then the second kind are avatars of individuals. So a person who is effectively being created by a creator, and the purpose of the creator making that virtual influencer is to make money. So the biggest example of that is Little Michaela, but there are loads of others. So there's a great one. My favorite is a guy called Ion Gotlick, who is a road cyclist. He's a sprint road cyclist. He's very muscly. He's lots of fun, very silly. And he has all kinds of sponsorship deals with different road and bike companies, bearing companies, things like that. But that's been created by a creator to make money. And then the last kind is an avatar of an individual. So anybody can create effectively their own avatar and create a life for themselves, which is not them, and communicate as someone else. So those are the three kinds. And what we really focus on are the brand built ones, where we're trying to create a proper personality, and also the customer service ones. But really we focus on the brand personality ones.
Intriguing indeed. So what about the data, which we chatted about previously? So data around, if you're making these three different models, the data around likability. For example, you can create a virtual influencer and the data knows the tone of voice, which I mentioned previously. That's great if it's safe, but is it also a concern about being dangerous?
Yeah, well, there's that old statement about technology, technology isn't good or bad, it's the people who use it. So, the technology is neutral, but it's certainly very powerful. And when it comes to understanding what kind of avatar to create, what kind of virtual influencer to create, to get a positive response, then yeah, we can absolutely do that. And that's our favored process. So if you're effectively creating a brand owned avatar who's going to have a one-on-one relationship with the consumer, and we're talking in this case about ones that actually have a backstory and a family and a history and all that kind of stuff, then you want to start by choosing your audience or your target consumer. And what we'll do is we'll get an example of who that target consumer is. And then effectively we'll ingest a whole bunch of conversations from people who fit that target consumer demographic. And then from that, we can find out things obviously like their interests, also their psychographics, how open are they, how neurotic are they. We can also find out what kind of imagery they're interested to or like by engagement rates, etc. And for all of those things, we use a machine learning tool, which will cluster all of it and then point us in the direction of the things which are over-indexing. And therefore we can determine the look, the sentence structure, the tone of voice, the interest and the content based on what the audience is genuinely interested in.
It's literally both exhilarating and terrifying, and it's something I'm hugely passionate about, so I'm loving. And on that note about actually the excitement but the concern factor, I know from speaking to you previously that you've done a lot of work on the ethics around virtual influencers in the UK and Europe. Can you take us through what you've done and where we're at the landscape level?
Yeah, I mean, it's still a really nascent industry. So this industry's only just started to get going. I mean, the interest in it has blown up in the last 6 months. But, you know, we registered the company, I think, in 2015. But really, it's only just starting to take off now. So we've had a lot of advice from some fantastic people at places like EASA, the umbrella body for Europe, in terms of advertising standards, and also from the ASA in the UK, just sharing ideas and discussing how the industry currently works, what the potential problems are. We have a system, which I'll talk about, which we're trying to get all of our clients and also the industry, so the other agencies and the other creators, to apply. But then there are other companies or organizations such as TINA in the US, Truth in Advertising. They've actually just come out with a request or a formal request to the FTC, which regulates things very differently from how EASA and the ASA regulate things here. But what they've asked the FTC to do is to come up with a disclosure system. So at the moment, virtual influencers are not caught within the FTC's guidelines, so they can effectively do branding deals without having to have any hashtag ad or anything like that. Yeah, which is interesting. So they basically called on them to do that. It's slightly different here, but what we want to do is go a bit further than that. So what we would like to do is actually have all virtual influencers effectively watermarked, or at least have a certain percentage of their posts watermarked, be they video or be they still image, or if they're just text, for example, on Twitter, to have some form of hashtag such as robots, so that you know that this is not a real person. And then secondly to that, you need to know who owns it. And we think this is the most important thing, because if you understand who owns something, then you understand what the motivation is. So you understand that if it's owned by a brand, it's trying to sell you something. So whatever story you're watching, you've got to understand that there's going to be some kind of product in there or service in there at some point. Whether it's owned by a creator, then you need to know that they're going to try and make money from this 9 times out of 10. So you can enjoy the story, you can have a relationship, but understand what the motivation is. Or if it's an avatar of not a real person, an avatar of a real person, then you need to know who that real person is, because otherwise it opens up trolling. It means you could create a far right wing, far left wing character, whatever you wanted, and they could talk with impunity. So we think understanding who owns and who controls is really important to understand motivation.
I think it's really good to know, and it's really good for everybody else to kind of know that. And like the stats I said on my talk earlier on, 42% of Gen Zs do not know that they're following virtual influencers. So I think what you're doing and paving the way is brilliant. So we'll keep our eyes on what you're doing.
And effectively, I mean, I think when these systems will really start working, these ethics systems, is when the big brands say, yep, we're going to do that. And then when that happens, you know, I think when they get on the front foot, then I kind of hope that everybody would just fall in line.
That's actually nice segue into my next question, actually, because I wanted to ask you a little about what brands are doing. And if we look at the COVID stage, we know that there was a huge spotlight on influencer marketing. And what happened for you in the VI world during COVID?
Well, the interest in it has gone nuts. And I think there's a pragmatic reason for that, in that it's a lot harder to send an influencer out to do some content for you when you can't go anywhere because of lockdown. I also think COVID's accelerated everything, and particularly technology, and particularly taking on and trying new technologies. And so brands which previously we might have spoken to a year ago or 2 years ago, who were just watching the space, all contacted us again and said, all right, we really want to get some budgets going now and have a proper look at this and consider trying it. So it's almost as if COVID accelerated the interest in having a direct relationship one-on-one with the consumer, because a lot of channels had almost been shut down. Increasing in that it's a digital channel, so it meant that you didn't have to rely on one-on-one communication in the real world. So I think all those things came together to increase the interest in the area.
Amazing. So it's grown, as we've seen in the stats. I'd love to ask you about what the science behind it is, but I'm aware that we're joining a fireside, and Natalie from Fly Academy. So I'm going to get Natalie to join us. Hello.
Hey,
and actually, hello.
Hey Maria, with this fireside, where's the fire?
Yeah, I should have some background. Oh yeah, look, I've got pretty ready kind of painting. If that works. Best I can do. It's kind of warm outside.
Okay. Hey, thank you for having me today.
It's a pleasure.
How are you all?
Good, real good.
Really good.
Sorry, but it is not something good. Is it good?
Perfect. It's
yeah,
perfect.
Thank
yeah,
you.
we can hear and see you perfectly. So I'm delighted to have you here.
Thank you.
Brilliant. And then we will actually hot it up at the fireside because we want to get through quite a few questions.
Yes.
And I'm going to kick off with Dudley first, which it's actually bringing one of his questions from our interview across. What's the science behind creating an influencer, a virtual influencer?
The question of why would I want to talk to a robot, right? That question, yeah?
Exactly.
Because that was something that I had to talk about an awful lot for a few years. Not so much now, but still people say, particularly older people, say, I wouldn't want to talk to a CGI character. You know, if it's CGI, I wouldn't be interested. You know, there's no way I'd have an emotional relationship with a character that I knew wasn't real. And so my response to that is, have you ever cried when you watched a movie? Because the point is that the moment you suspend disbelief, you can have an emotional relationship with something. You can read a book and become emotionally connected with something that's not real. You can watch a film, television. You know, those characters aren't real, but they affect you emotionally. If you also look at the science of anthropomorphism, so when you look at something which looks like a human, the amygdala, the oldest part of your brain, immediately fires off a bunch of hormones and creates a response to something that looks like a human, and you give it a sense of intelligence, and you give it you create an emotional bond with it. You can't help it. So you put those two things together. If you have a compelling story and the way your brain works, you can't help but have a relationship. You can decide not to. You can say, I don't like this or I don't want this, but the brain plays a trick on you because that's the way it works.
Absolutely amazing. And actually that's going to tee up a little bit, because I want to ask you one more question, Dudley, and when we come on to Natalie, we're going to talk about the brain as well, so with ourselves. So there's a lot of thinking behind how we develop these personalities. But to stick with you, and I mentioned about little Michaela, who I'm mad about at the moment, or have been for a while, just because I'm fascinated by how real she looks, her success. I showed my kids and they were like, how is that a robot? But why can't you see her in real life besides online? But this is where I find it really interesting, because to me, I thought she was all about good, because she's in hashtag Black Lives Matter. She calls herself a change-seeking robot. But actually, is that the case? Like, there's when you look into it, I think you had some more information on it.
Yeah, if you look at it right now, or the last year or so, you would definitely think she was a force for positive change. But if you looked at how Brud developed her and how they created awareness of her, then they did it through a whole ton of deception. So when they first created her, she quickly had an argument with a far right-wing VI called Bermuda, and Bermuda started to say a bunch of very right-wing things, tell off Michaela, indirect messaging on her account. Bermuda would put up things on her own grid saying how awful little Michaela was, and they created like a little war between the two. And then effectively Bermuda said to Michaela, you need to take these posts down, otherwise I'm going to hack your account, I'm going to delete your posts. And then sure enough, Bermuda hacked the account, deleted all of Michaela's posts, then started putting up sort of right-wing messages. So it was at that point that a lot of press went out about this. Michaela's following went through the roof because all the newspapers around the world talked about this battle between these two virtual influencers, a very compelling story. Now, between all of this, there are a lot of kids and people on Michaela's channel who had no idea that she was a VI because they didn't disclose it. They did start talking about the fact that she was a VI at a certain time, but they certainly confused an awful lot of children, which I think is unconscionable. And then you discover that actually Brad owned Bermuda as well, and the whole thing was a PR stunt. So if you think about what worked very nicely, but I would just question the ethics of doing that, the ethics of fooling a whole bunch of people about a VI, particularly kids, and then creating a false battle. Now, if it's done with disclosure, it's completely different because it's a form of entertainment, but it ceases to become entertainment when you think something is completely real.
Yeah, especially when it's big and far right, and when we're looking at the uprising in the world and how to even the playing field. You know, it's quite a dangerous game.
Now Bermuda's become woke. So now she's like become, you know, much more sort of centrist in terms of her politics.
Okay. Absolutely fascinating. So next question over to you, Nat, which is personal branding, right? So we've gone through this, we've kind of worked out through Dudley from the virtual side, how you use data to create this personal persona and branding. Whereas you create, like any one of us here on this webinar, everybody listening, us talking, we're in business. So you can teach us how to grow businesses through our own influence.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm a founder of Fly Academy. It is a personal branding agency, and we are working for people and with people because we are helping to build their own and develop their own personal brand strategy. And it's really important because you are like having your additional free marketing channel to promote and deliver message to your customer that you want to communicate to your audience. That's why we are working with people and help them to start it. And the stronger personal brand you have, the faster your business or project is growing. And I'm like, believe it for sure. And before to start, we always ask our clients to think about for what you need all this stuff and for what you need your personal brand. And also we developed our method, and it includes only 5 steps, but very important steps. First of all, it's you are a brand, and you need to stop and think about your unique personal proposition, what you are talking about. And the second step is your roles. You need to define 3 roles which you communicate to the world. The third step is your branding, personal branding, what you are talking, how your tone of voice, how you look like, your personal style, because it's like your outcome communication. And then it is your channels, the 4 steps. Your channels, it could be offline, online, and here we are going to a social media in this step. And we are creating a strategy for social media. And after this, the 5th steps is all about content. And as we know, the content is the king. That's why we are sharing our methods to the whole clients. And if I have a possibility, I can like send you a link to our website, and it will be like your checklist for doing and creating your personal brand right now. So it's like our method.
How do you test for results when you've gone to that length of putting it all together?
Yes, you know that during our work, we always use Persollo analyzer because it's really important. Sometimes we like buying advertising from bloggers, from influencers, and we need to measure the activity. That's why we use your analyzer to analyze deeply how active they are, because we don't need followers, so we just need to understand how good they are. And that's why Persollo is amazing for us, and I'm really happy to use this tool for our clients. And as I think about your tool Discovery, and in September we are planning to use this tool for our new product, and I will tell you later about our test.
Okay, great. And actually, you did say that. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about the new product first? And then, like, what's the name of it? And then we can bring you back on at the end to do more if you like.
Yes, it is a unique test, like disruptive test, because it will help us to build your personal branding model. Not all this information in internet that we can find is like very, very generous. And we want to create tests which will based on your psychological and biological components of your person, will help to create your personal brand and model how to choose easiest way for your personality to create strategy for your personal brand.
Okay, so I think there's quite a lot more in that. And actually, if anybody wants to tune in at the very end for an extra 5, Nat has said that she'd message say she'd love to talk more. So I think,
okay,
if you'd like. And then we do have to move on. One last question, because we're running a little bit behind. Dudley, what's your thoughts? Is virtual influencer going away? What is our takeaway that we should know or think about? Bear in mind, I support the real people, and that's where I like both. Can we get both in there? Should we do squads with virtuals and real?
I don't think they're going to take any jobs away from real influencers, so I don't think people should worry about that at all. I think you're just going to see the space grow hugely. I mean, I honestly believe in 10 years there won't be a brand without some form of a VI, which is communicating one-on-one with an audience. And I'm very happy to put my name to that.
That is incredible.
Yeah, but that doesn't stop the job of traditional influencers at all. Far from it. I think it just adds to the ecosystem.
Amazing. That's absolutely brilliant. And guys, we've wrapped up. Thank you, Dudley. Thank you, Nat. Welcome, Jay.
Thanks, Nat. Hi, Jay.
Hey.
How are you? And have you got Kat with you?
Yeah, she's in. I think I can see she's in the attendees.
Oh, yeah. I can do some jiggery-do. I've got some magic tools. Yeah. So today I'm really excited with you guys. So we're talking about the rise of Gen Z. And we've got I think what you're doing is absolutely brilliant, because from so many different areas that I'm excited about it. Hello, how are you?
Hello. Good, how are you?
Yeah, really good, thank you. Yeah, just saying, so really excited about what you're doing from a diversity, which you're going to go into with some really cool insights, which you're learning. But actually, I'm going to kick off quite quickly because we are running behind. Jay, the use of consultants was also mentioned in the last webinar by Inca, as they use influencers and move into that as a bigger model to consult with brands and how they create content for the audience. This is definitely a growth area. Can you please take me through how Imagine use Gen Z consultants working with brands?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, we enable agencies and brands to crowdsource feedback, ideas, or insights from our community of Gen Z consultants. So they can build their branding, their marketing, and their products with Gen Z in the room. So whether it's sense checking or providing feedback on a campaign for an agency, or enabling a brand to actually crowdsource brand new marketing ideas, our consultants can do literally all of it, which is really, really cool.
Absolutely brilliant. Okay, what about in many ways what you're saying in this approach enables Gen Z to shape their future?
Yeah, because I think so. Our entire mission is to enable Gen Z to shape their future, and we know the best way for them to do that is with brands. Because as you know, and I know, and many of the audience will know, brands shape countries and culture like governments never really could. So we know the best way for Gen Z to shape their future is by putting them in the room with brands when decisions are being made. So whether that's around branding, marketing, or product, if we can enable Gen Z to be in the room when those decisions are being made, they can then actually truly affect and shape their future. So yeah, that's exactly why we do what we do.
It's amazing. Kat, what's like from you, like actually stick with Jay for 1 more second. How does it work in principle? Because you mentioned crowdsourcing when we caught up recently.
Yeah. So say for example, from like a feedback perspective, say if an agency or brand wants to gain feedback from our consultants, what would happen is a brand would come to us and say, okay, we've got, say for example, 5 marketing campaigns that we want your Gen Z consultants to review. We can send those marketing campaigns to our consultants via push notification. Our consultants then receive those, and within 24 to 72 hours, they can send video or written feedback about the 2 campaigns or the 1 campaign the brand should take forward and how they can then improve that campaign. Normally this is done via video because it's a great way of having some real depth of insight. So the consultants can look at that, go, okay, these are the things that we love about this specific campaign of the 5, and this is how we think you can improve it. So for the brand, within 24 to 72 hours, they can really sense check whatever they're doing, whether it's branding, marketing, or product, and then they can then roll it out with the confidence of knowing they've got the data from Gen Z to back up the brand or the agency's hunches that they had.
Incredible. Kat, what like, whenever we're talking, you always had some really nice insights into it as well.
Yeah, so I mean, Jay was talking there about our we run workshops and we run instant insights, and he was talking about kind of more about instant insight product. And for those, we can gather a data set from a set of questions that we'll push out to our community, and then we as a team will analyze those, we'll provide themes, and then we'll provide insight, and we'll take that back to the client. So this could be anything from 1 question to 10 questions. It could be multiple choice to extensive written feedback or the video that Jay mentioned, but we'll adapt that based on the brief.
Amazing. Is there a working example or case study that you could take us through?
Absolutely, yeah. So we actually ran a virtual workshop for our NFL client last week, last Friday. Such a good day. It was so exciting. But that came about because they wanted to consult with our community about helping to shape their youth marketing strategy. And so we set our community a challenge, or quite a few challenges actually. But one of the challenges was to give honest feedback about existing content, but in a creative way. And then the next stage of that was for our consultants to film a video. And to be honest, we were completely blown away with the responses. And together with NFL, we then chose the best 6 consultants based on how they presented their ideas, and they attended that Friday workshop. And there was a mixture of individual tasks with group tasks. It was a really jam-packed day, and it was just such a pleasure to be a part of that and to work with NFL and our consultants. And yeah, we had a very, very happy client at the end of that.
I love that. You guys are quite a team, aren't you?
Yeah.
So Kat is very good at getting everything done. I'm like, this is what we want to do. This is the dream. Like, okay, I'm going to make it happen. We're actually going to.
Well, I've had the pleasure of working with Kat before, and I know the magic she brings. She's incredible, so you're a lucky guy. It's brilliant. And actually, sticking with you, Kat, for a second, and I mentioned this in my earlier talk, and I talked, we are going through an uprising, and there is a spotlight on the fact that inclusion isn't quite here yet, and we need to see more of that. When you look at your consultants to Gen Z, what about diversity and inclusion? How much of a consideration is that of yours?
Yeah, it's a great question, and to be honest, always a consideration, but not as an afterthought. It's actually the way that we've built our business. So, you know, we work with young people all over the country, no matter what their background, you know, no matter gender, disability, parents' income, skill set, location, sexual preference. As long as they are between 16 to 25 years old, they all get the same opportunity with us, and that is to submit their ideas in their own style. And, you know, the benefit of that is that they will get paid for those ideas if they get to the end stage. But yeah, it's an absolutely, you know, a crucial part of how we've built our business.
Yeah, and I think for us, internally, like diversity is just built into our team because we know internally it's our strength, and that's one of our internal values, that diversity is our strength, and we know that our different backgrounds really, whether that's race or gender, whatever it may be, just makes us stronger and adds value to what we're doing. And from like a statistical perspective, 65% of our community, our Gen Z consultant community, are female, 35% are Black, 25% are from Asian backgrounds, and 10% are from the LGBTQ+ community. So when you look at our internal consultant community compared to the industry, we are extremely diverse. And probably to the other end, where we actually probably need to get some more guys in our community.
Yeah.
Women. So I think I love that we truly reflect the society that we are in, and then what we are able to add to agencies and brands, the value we're able to add is we're able to bring diversity of thought in because we have such a diverse community of consultants.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful, and I will hope the rest of the world wakes up to that, because the research is there that really highlights that once you bring diversity into the genetic makeup of the team, performance increases. So you're already onto that, which is brilliant. And I think what you're doing for the Gen Z is, what you're doing for them is incredible, but also what you're doing for the brands. Like, this is a real win-win situation, so it's a very clever business model. What do you think your predictions are for what's to come next? I'll ask both of you, so whoever wants to go first.
Yeah,
I'll go. Yeah, I beat you, Jeff. So I think, well, for us, it will be to expand into other countries. Every meeting that we have, we are asked, when are you going to be in Europe? When are you going to be in the US? And, you know, we are a small business, we're still a startup, but that is absolutely something that we want to start cracking on with. And yeah, I know Jay's got a pretty good aim as well, so I'll let him have it.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think just on the back of what Kat's saying, the main focus for us really is to have 1 million Gen Z in our community, because we know that there's so much talent out there, and that if we can be the biggest community of Gen Z around the world, then they're always going to be working, because brands will always be coming to us. And we're working with some really, really exciting clients right now, and they've got global reach. So they're very much, as Kat was saying, they're very much saying, okay, let's go into the US, let's go into mainland Europe, let's go into EMEA, and let's really reach out there and get new consultants on board, but get some really exciting briefs to them. So yeah, I think for us, we're 1 million Gen Z on the platform, and yeah, moving across EMEA and the US, and basically taking over the world. So global domination. That is the answer to your question. Global domination. That's what we're doing.
I love it. It doesn't want global domination, but doing it for good is amazing. This is a curveball question, but so if they're Gen Z, they're working with you, what's next for them? Is that in the roadmap for you guys, or is that where you do training, or is that this is an introduction to them of how they can work?
Yeah, it's a really good question, actually, because what we're doing is we're providing these opportunities for young people, and that is to, you know, enable them to help to shape their future. And so we're giving them the tools of being able to work with brands, great, you know, being able to learn how to craft ideas, giving them confidence to record videos, you know, to be in these environments that they might not have that opportunity to be in, you know, being, whether you're virtual or whether you're in person in a workshop with a brand or an agency, you know, that's a big deal. You don't get that opportunity every day. So the way that we see it is that those things that they participate, those challenges with us, will just allow them to have more confidence going into future roles. And actually, an amazing example is Anna, who is our community lead. She was part of a workshop. She took part in a brand challenge, and she stood out so much to us that we ended up hiring her. And, you know, I know that from the NFL session last week, a couple of the consultants were really cheeky and kind of said, so are you hiring NFL? And, you know, they're on their radar now. So we're not saying we're going to always place people in jobs, but it is creating opportunities for conversations to happen after the work that they do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think the thing that I love that Kat was pointing out there is that for our consultants, so for many of us in the industry, we wouldn't get to be in the room with a brand until later in our career. But for our consultants, we're putting them directly in the room with brands very early in their journey, so they can get that experience and put that on their CV, so that when they're applying for roles, they're going, hey, you know what, I've done all of this work. Here's my catalog, here's my portfolio of work that I've done on live briefs with brands. Like that you never hear of that. Normally it's like fake briefs that people are putting people on. We're actually putting them on live briefs. So that's super exciting for us, and I think it's the journey is going to be amazing to watch so many of our consultants go into roles and land stuff like that, which is cool.
Yeah, well, they say the Gen Zs come to fix the troubles that we've created, so I think we welcome them.
Yeah.
Exactly. What about brands? Okay, another fireside one to you guys. What about brands? Do they find you? Do you sell into them? How do you make yourselves? How do we get world domination?
World dominate. I love that. I love that you're with me on that, Maria. So it's a bit of both. So we sometimes get brands, they come to us directly via our website or just approach us on LinkedIn or whatever it may be. But I just love talking to people. I love human beings. So I'm always out there trying to make new friends and just see what's going on in the world. And really, a lot of the time, the great thing that we do is we can work with both brands and agencies, because we're not really a threat to agencies, because for a lot of them, if they just want feedback, we're perfect for that. So it's not always the ideation side of things that agencies will come to us for. A lot of time it's for, hey, we just need to sense check something quickly and get quick feedback. So agencies, and we have a massive amount of agencies on our roster that we communicate with on a regular basis. And then from a brand's perspective, a lot of times it's actually through referrals. So a lot of our existing clients will just be like, oh, hey, so one of our clients left the NFL and she's gone to work at another organization now. And she was like, oh, hey, loved working with you there. We want to do the same work with you here. And then she's referring us to others. So it's very much like people work with us. They see that it's very easy to work with us and our consultants deliver great work. And then they're kind of like, okay, it's a no-brainer for me to introduce you to other people in the industry. So we're very much happy for people to reach out. And we're also doing a lot of outreach ourselves, just adding value to people. So that's my role, pretty much just emailing people and saying, hey, we're hosting a webinar on July the 8th, where we're going to have a few of our consultants on a panel, and brands can just jump online and ask any questions that they want. So nothing's being held back. You can just jump onto the panel and ask questions directly to our consultants. So it's stuff like that where really it's probably not going to bring much value to us as a startup, but to the brand, to be able to ask Gen Z directly, just adds great value to them.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely brilliant. I'll definitely join it.
Yeah, and we're doing kind of, well, you would have seen this anyway, Maria, but you know, we're doing a lot of webinars, and thank you for obviously having us today, and podcasts, and you know, a lot more speaking opportunities, and that's something that Jay has done for ages, and you know, the whole time the business has been going. But it's really nice because now we're starting to do a lot of that together, and because we have very different skill sets and also very different backgrounds, we get asked to just share our stories really, and you know, that's really interesting for brands, but it's equally as interesting to the consultants. And, you know, our business doesn't exist without our consultants. So yes, it's so important to have the brands and to have those conversations happening and get new business, but actually the big focus for me is constantly getting new consultants onto our platform. So I spend a lot of time talking to schools, talking to, you know, other organisations that have 16 to 25-year-olds across the country to kind of inspire them and talk to them about why they should be a part of our community.
That's amazing. It's good. Well done. Well, I'm just, like I've said, I'm such a big fan of the pair of you, both of you, and the business. And I just think what you're doing for brands is really exciting. And I'm going to say thank you very much. And what I realised, I did bring you in where we're meant to be on the break, so I'll say to everybody else, you can all have a break now. My technology skills, but it's been brilliant, and actually it was right to go flying into that, because I think the whole flow of looking at the virtual influencers, business influence, and Gen Z just really stacks up in this different world of influence and how it works. It's really quite brilliant. So thank you, guys. And next up after the break, we'll bring Chris in. So we'll see you on the other side.
Thanks so much, Maria.
Yes, thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. See you in 5. Hello. Hello,
Hi.
Chris. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's brilliant. So we've got some good chat coming from you today, and I think the first thing that I wanted to highlight was like Gleam were the very first talent agency, which
Sorry,
is
I'm just going to move
astonishing
so
when you
that
look.
the light's not right behind me. There you go. Sorry.
Yeah, is that good?
Yeah, I think that's a bit better. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you look good here. Brilliant. So when you look at, and that's astonishing when you look at the landscape today, because there's so much to it. I'd love to hear from you, your views on the landscape and how it's morphed and grown.
Yeah, I mean, Gleam as a business has been around for, well, as a business for 11 years, but actually as Gleam Futures for 10 years. And I've been a part of it for 4 years. So I can obviously talk from what I've heard from Dom, who founded the business, and kind of hearing his insight on what happened prior to 2016. But it just feels like the whole landscape has grown dramatically, for the first thing. But also the way that it's shifted one way to another and back again, if you see what I mean. So kind of, I think the thing that really stands out to us is that when the business was started and we kind of started to sign our first few talent, the first talent we ever signed was a duo called Pixie Woo, two sisters called Sam and Nick Chapman, who are professional makeup artists, and they started their channel just purely, they basically created makeup tutorials for their friends, and rather than like trying to talk them through it over the phone, they filmed themselves and uploaded it to YouTube and then sent that link to their friends. And from there, they started to get more and more views, and the community built. And Dom was working in Gleam's first iteration at the time, which was called Gleam Digital, which was like a social consultancy basically. And he started to work with Chanel and brands like that. And so he got in touch with Sam and Nick, and then started working closely with those guys. And then he started to, they one day just said to him, you know, we're working with you so much, how would you feel about managing us? And it kind of went on from there. So at the time, there wasn't really a huge amount of talent in the market. There weren't many people doing it. And, you know, we started to build up the roster from there. And I mean, as some people might know Gleam, they might know that the kind of the talent that we initially signed were kind of based on recommendations. So it was almost like a friendship network that started Gleam, and then we kind of built out from there. But then if you fast forward to today and the advancements in technology and the platforms themselves as well, you know, I think we did some research into this last year, and there's now 25 million people around the world who classify themselves as a creator or an influencer, or however you want to call them. So I think that's the one big change from a talent perspective, is that initially there was, you know, a few thousand people probably around the world who were creating content, and they probably only really had YouTube as their main platform. So, you know, it was people with their old digital cameras filming themselves in their bedroom and uploading content. You know, where we are now is vastly different. So you've got, you know, 25 million people. The quality of the smartphone now means that you don't need an elaborate rig or high production values to create content, which is great. So people who have a passion and want to build a community or an audience around it can, and obviously the platforms they're in help them do that as well. So YouTube's, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok most recently, and so that's kind of really created this huge market. But then on the business side, I think when Pixie Woo started out, and when the kind of Gleam started out, the partnerships felt quite big from the offset. You know, some of the first sort of jobs that the guys did were kind of quite big partnerships, and they were treated more like traditional celebrity endorsements, and there was a lot more thought and strategy went into every sort of single part of the relationship, and the relationship was very, very deep, and a lot of it was quite heavy touch. It was very sort of relationship based, and then I think what we started to see was as the market started to become a success, and other brands started to see the success that other competitors were having with talent, plus the boom in talent themselves, the kind of the market sort of just became adopted by so many more. And now there's so many other businesses that have now come into the market as well, who can add extra layers to what's going on. And it kind of became quite fragmented quite quickly, I think. And then from there, you know, it felt a little bit from kind of an outsider looking in that it became, rather than more strategic, it became quite tactical. It became this way of, oh, we'll just, you know, we've got 5k left at the end of our budget, let's chuck a bit of influencer and see what happens, sort of thing.
Totally.
Rather than thinking about how the role that they were playing in the wider mix and what were brands really looking to try and get out of them, and of the partnership. So I think while that was great, it kind of then created this sort of tactical area, which kind of came with some byproducts of, you know, negativity and this kind of quick buck mentality of anyone around Black Friday would go on Instagram and just see like image after image after image of just people trying to sell something, and it became a classified ad board, I think.
Yeah.
But now I feel like, and we feel like in the last couple of years, it's really starting to shift back towards what made the space great in the first place, which is, you know, much more strategic thinking about the role that influencers have for each and every brand, and what are they trying to get out of them and of the partnerships themselves. So I think, you know, the industry has ridden that wave a little bit, and I think the kind of the quality over quantity aspect is coming back into it a bit.
Would you say then that we're now at the stage that the industry is finally maturing?
We like to think so. Definitely. I think the kind of, we've spoken about this before, haven't we? The kind of the negative press, and obviously Scott as well, and who spoke earlier, and I've had a number of conversations about this as well, but just how the way that influencer marketing is portrayed in the press, and the trade press it's like 75% negative. It feels like it's kind of beaten with this stick of, you know, it's all commoditized, it's, you know, just people selling out. It feels a little bit cheap, when actually the kind of the best success that we're seeing and our partners are seeing are in these deeper relationships that are not talked about as much. But the kind of the whole, the kind of the stick that's been used to beat the industry as well is around measurement. And this is something that, you know, we've been making a lot of strides in the last 2 years with partners, and they really see the value of what talent can bring to their overall mix. So we're really excited about the future, because we feel that the narrative is shifting now, and it's coming back towards, again, to repeat myself, but that quality over quantity approach. And also when you couple that with the strides that we're making in measurement, the proof's there now as well. It's not just about a kind of, this seems like it's working, it's doing well, you know, ish. It's not just reliant on likes. It's not just reliant on sort of affiliate models with last click attribution and, oh, this talent only drove 10 sales, when actually probably the impact they've had is much wider than that, than just the 10 sales that people who click through you on a link or something like that. So I mean, we think it's maturing, and we're really excited about the future. I think there's a lot more to come. I think we've only really scratched the surface, to be honest.
Amazing. And it's funny you talk about like the omni-channel as well. So I mentioned before, like Inca and the Fifth and Matthew Reform were all on the last webinar, and they were talking about the cross-channel activity. And then you, as a, you know, Gleam was seen as a talent agency, but you're looking at these trends, aren't you? Because when we were chatting, you've got some fantastic developments in terms of the different product lines of the business. Do you want to take us through that?
Yeah. So yeah, we at the heart of what we do is still talent, and that's, you know, everything we've done. So the talent management side of the business is the biggest part of the business. But in the last 10 years, yeah, we've kind of, I guess you could say, diversified a little bit. So we've now become more of like the Gleam Group, which has separate divisions within it. So I head up the Gleam Solutions team, which is our in-house marketing agency. So we build sort of like talent-led activations and campaigns for brands, and it's not just solely reliant on the talent that we represent on the management side. We can go and find talent anywhere, and we build talent strategies and things like that. And as part of that, we've been integrating a lot closer with our partners' comms teams, central comms teams. So we've really been able to kind of sort of demonstrate the value of talent, and we really consider influence as its own channel. So we believe that it should be planned and bought and measured much like any other channel would be, like your TV or your out of home. But not only that, also when you consider it as its own channel and you think about it from the overarching comms approach, you then start to notice opportunities for crossover. So, you know, talent are human beings. They're not just restricted by their Instagram page or their YouTube page. They're human beings. You can take them offline. You can create like in-person situations where you can get the value out of a talent, much like you would with a celebrity, or you can enable talent to be your kind of human voice. You know, we all know that audiences are screaming out for a certain level of trust in everything that they're looking for now, you know, with brands and also with the rise in social platforms, particularly, audiences are now looking to brands to humanize themselves. They expect them to have a point of view. Like, I think we can all agree, like seeing that in what's been happening recently with the Black Lives Matter movement, and particularly in the US, how audiences are demanding that brands have a perspective, have a viewpoint on everything. And that's something that when you align with the right talent, you automatically humanize yourself, because you're enabling them to tell your story on your behalf, rather than as a brand broadcasting your message and telling people what you want them to know. It's kind of like you're allowing people to tell your story on your behalf, which is much more trustworthy. You're kind of reliant on the, you're, not to use a more nefarious term here, but you're capitalizing on the credibility and the trust that the talent have cultivated over a number of years. So that's where we think the real power comes from talent, and then being able to use them not just on their own channels, but in out of home, and you know, repurposing the content for TV or for social, particularly during the COVID situation. We've seen that a lot, where brands are getting talent to create content because their production teams can't produce stuff because they can't all be in the same place at once. So getting talent to produce stuff at home and then repurposing it for TV has been really powerful during COVID as well. So yes, we're kind of, and also it ties into our kind of belief that this is a strategic channel. You know, when the omni-channel or the cross-channel, however you want to put it, that's going to be the most exciting thing, I think, in the next few years as well, and really seeing talent being taken that next level and not just being restricted to their own channels, essentially.
Yeah, I think absolutely spot on. We chatted about this. I remember doing a slide in 2016. I think a few brands thought I was bonkers at the time, where I said we're going to put influence marketing in the center of everything, and any A/B testing I've done, or anybody I've spoken to, is a lot of anecdotal but not much hard evidence. If you run a display campaign, you put influencer marketing creative into it or display creative into it, the results is phenomenally swayed, better performance towards influencer marketing, you know. And then we did talk about, you know, behavior targeting. If it's done right, you take, for the influencer marketing, take the influencer marketing creative and you cut that into stills and put call to actions. Don't make a really bland display ad to retarget with it. Just go and really use the space. And to your point, you know, the brands moving into this space and understanding the cross-channel, omni-channel, you know, how they work is ridiculously exciting. And you've teed yourself up for it, which is really good. And I want to quickly go back to, you mentioned earlier about measurement. And we talked about how, you know, the fragmented marketing, influencer marketing, it is maturing, and we are looking at it. Brands are being much more strategic. What's your kind of thoughts on what does measurement look like post past likes? Yeah,
well, this is something that we've been banging the drum on for a good few years now, like you know, and we've been lucky that the partners that we've been able to build good relationships with have kind of agreed with us and our belief that it's not just about the amount of likes you can get, because I don't know about you, Marie, but I know when we were allowed on the tube and you used to see people on their phones on the tube and they'd be scrolling through Instagram. I mean, they're flying through and they're double tapping things, but are they really, is that really an engagement? You know, it feels like, you know, the shift back towards quality over quantity, I think, is going to be powerful as well, in terms of the engagement that audiences, the engagement that talent are going to have to work hard for, because, you know, there's got to be an element of storytelling back in there again. But in order to measure that and measure the power of storytelling, you need to think beyond just the amount of likes. So again, when we think about planning a campaign and thinking about it from the wider comms perspective, when you think about it, when you're planning up front, you can actually say, right, what is the role for influencers here? And then you can allocate objectives, and from that objective, you can then allocate KPIs, much like you would any other channel. And then that gives you the power to predict or to plan how you're going to report at the end. So last year we did a lot of work with one of our partners, and we were able to plug into their central reporting system. So where they would get their TV results and their out-of-home results, they would get their influence results into that as well on a weekly basis. And then at the end of the campaign, they had a third-party econometric business come in and do a study on the performance of the overall campaign. And what we found was that influence was the third best performing channel, and it outperformed, you know, social, e-com, radio, press. I think the only one that it didn't outperform was TV at the time, which included VOD and things like that. But what was most interesting was it was by far the least invested channel. So in comparison to TV, which was the highest investment, in comparison to influence, which was the lowest investment, it still came out as the third best performing channel. So that then can kind of which then informed this year's decisions to say, okay, we're going to upweight more towards influence, which, you know, COVID has had an impact on that, obviously. But it was great to have that kind of validation finally, to be like, look, this isn't even us. This is a third party econometric business. Plus it was cold, hard facts that were in comparison against other channels. And it was like, this is what we've been striving for. So as you can imagine, we've now used that as our flag to wave and every opportunity and be like, look, this does work. This is kind of, it's in the numbers, it's in the data, it's proof. So yeah, that's where we for the future is. And, you know, as you measure any other channel, that's how we can measure influence. It just needs to be planned appropriately, as with everything else.
Absolutely spot on. Thank you very much, Chris. That was brilliant. And it's nice, you know, everybody here is really highlighting the fact that this area is absolutely maturing. It's becoming strategic, it's accountable, we see results. It's hot now. So thank you. I'm going to invite Susie to join us. Chris, thank you so much. Thanks been brilliant chatting to you. See you later.
Cheers,
hello.
Hi Maria, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
It is early in Miami, 7, but I actually had to put the blinds down. I've never been in here this early before.
I want to say a big thank you and everybody, because we had somebody from Sydney, London, Miami. This is the time that's really good for us in London, but thank you, a big extra thank you to Susie. You just out of bed.
I'm so thrilled. No, and actually I do like getting up early when I can. So thank you, Maria, and what a cool global group to be part of.
I know,
today.
it's amazing. It's great. The content's been great. And I'm really excited to hear your talk. So you've brought out your second book. And it's all about stop checking your likes and shake off the need for approval of life and live an incredible life. And I think what I really like about this, you know, we're all developing ourselves and we've all got our things that hold us back and we're all trying to unlock them. And I think for me, looking through, like reading the book, it's just so digestible, and you've got direct messages with tips. And just some of the things that I've taken out of the book that I now use is factor theory, do you know, where it's just little tools that is what you're questioning a factor theory, because we can give power to things, but I can pull it loads. But I think I'm going to hand over to you to do your magic, and thank you again.
Yay, thank you, Maria. Well, as you know, I am a life coach based in the US. I'm an advice columnist for places like Marie Claire, Cosmo, and I am lucky enough to be connected with lots of business owners. Of course, I have my own business, a lot of influencers. And I mean, look, we head into July tomorrow. It has been a year that no one has expected. And what I've just really come to notice, and just by speaking to a lot of people, and I'm hearing more and more their struggles, it's almost like this struggle, this question mark, like, is it almost okay to move forward? Is it okay to keep selling? Is it okay to keep putting my stuff out there, you know, business as usual? And I think there's just, you know, a lot of sensitivity, a lot of concern, which is understandable. But essentially the answer is always going to be yes. There is nothing good that happens in any economy, in any market, in any industry, when money stops circulating, when people stop selling. And the short talk I'm going to be sharing with you today is called Permission to Move Forward. 3 things you have complete control over right now and always. But especially important to remember in terms of crisis, in terms of uncertainty. So I will dive straight in. Maria, you can of course let me know if you have questions, or we can answer any questions that you have at the end. But I'm going to dive straight in because this topic is especially important right now, because your confidence as a leader matters. And the thing is, we're all real leaders, right? When you think about who is leading your life, it's you. It will always be just you. Maybe you have a business and a team. Maybe you have an audience who follow you. Maybe you're, you know, an individual contributor somewhere, but you're still leading within your own position, within your own specific contribution. And confidence matters. And all this really means, right, is essentially managing your mind, no matter the external circumstances, no matter what seems scary out there, because it's very easy to lose our steadiness and to lose our sense of control, our sense of kind of knowing what to expect, and even just how life is going to unfold in the short term. So confidence, this is out of the three things, the first thing, and the three things are confidence, intentional thinking, and then effort. And I'm going to wrap up effort once we get to part 3 with a 24-hour challenge, which is very helpful just to get moving. So confidence, first of all, right? Like, what does this really mean? Your confidence is everything, as any human, right? Of course, as business owners specifically, but confidence really matters. And we get confidence wrong, right? We think, confidence is the person who's always winning, right? Or the person who can just speak on stage, or the person who's really maybe charismatic at a dinner party even. But it's actually quieter than that and more simple than that. And it's really interesting to even think about, gosh, is this me? Is this something that I can possess, this one skill? Which is simply the willingness to be uncomfortable. That's it, right? And you see influencers specifically putting them, the successful influencers, consistently being okay with discomfort, right? So putting themselves in new situations, doing new collaborations, doing things that feel risky and different, right? And authentic confidence isn't like loud, right? Kind of, extroversion. And it's not just all about, like, look at me, I'm doing well. It's so different than that. It is simply this quiet steadiness and your willingness to experience discomfort. I call it the NET, the negative emotion tolerance. And the scale being 10, you can just like throw anything at you and you're confident. And my question, like, it's really important to think, really, where am I on that scale? Am I a 5, a 6? Am I really up there? Am I nowhere near a 5? Whatever your tolerance for negative emotion is in direct relation then to how confident you are. And what's so interesting is, as human beings, we will do anything to avoid pain, right? We'll do more to avoid pain than to actually experience pleasure or experience success. And right now in this specific period, like halfway through 2020, like the timing of this is so interesting. It's, what am I willing to do in order to really still seize this year, right? We have half left. This is a glass half full situation, right? Like half of the year left. I know it's uncertain, scary, lots of shifting. A friend of mine who, in fact, is an influencer here with a beer brand, they've said that they're no longer going to be doing standard influencer marketing. They're going to be donating all of their influencer budget to different charities here in the US this year. And look, it is interesting, right? It's not always easy to think, okay, I have a problem, or there's some type of crisis, or something doesn't feel good, something's fallen through for me, and then think, okay, well, what then am I willing to do? Well, instead of, feeling stuck, feeling uncertain and doing nothing, which we almost all do in some cases, we still always have this control, right? This ability to make ourselves uncomfortable, to be willing to go there and to take some action. So when it comes to confidence, such an important thing to remember is, okay, something happens or you need to make a move. It's going to require some growth, some new skills, some taking action that you haven't done before, right? So what is it that you're actually risking? This is what we do in the coaching world, specifically with business owners and any type of leader. We think, okay, what is it that you want to do or that you have to do? What is it going to require from you? And it's always going to require some work, some courage. And the courage is because it's not easy and it's going to require some discomfort, right? Because you might risk getting rejected, failing, it not working out, somebody not liking it or liking you as a result of it. And confidence is your ability to be okay anyway. If all of those things happen, to be okay anyway and to take action anyway. Because those of us who are truly confident, we know, right? We know that the worst thing that can happen is essentially a feeling, just a feeling, right? And Maria mentioned at the beginning, like, fact and theory, the difference. We think, gosh, I failed, it's over, or something bad has happened, or the market is bad. And there are people who are thriving in this market, right? Or if something doesn't work out, we think it's terrible. I mean, really, is that a fact? Do we know that yet? Right, so the confident among us are more curious, right? We look at what's missing versus what's wrong, and we are willing to still keep taking action no matter what. And the good news and the bad news is that this confidence, this willingness to keep on experiencing negative emotion, it's entirely up to us. It is no one can choose this for us. No one can take it away. No one can bestow it upon us. It is simply, it belongs to us. And this willingness is therefore then a decision that we make. And in coaching, we use this expression, the confidence competence loop, a lot, which is awesome. And if you observe any confident person in your life, specifically a leader in business, you will see that they take a lot of risks, right? They always have this bias towards action. And the way the confidence competence loop works means that if you feel confident, right, you then will take action, which leads to competence, right? Because competence comes through action, through practice, through experience. And then the more competent you become, the more confident you feel to then keep taking the next step. And then it is this gorgeous cycle. It is this gorgeous cycle that keeps going, the confidence competence loop. So if you're willing to be uncomfortable, to do something that maybe feels scary or risky, but you feel called to do it, right, in terms of being able to move forward, break new barriers, push ahead, then what won't be available to you, right? Those of us who win, you see this historically, you see it in business everywhere. Those who win are just consistently taking new action in new arenas, stuff that hasn't been proven yet, stuff that hasn't necessarily been done in their new specific way yet. And the willingness to be uncomfortable, to do it anyway, to make decisions, and to give yourself this permission, no matter the timing, no matter the circumstances, but to know that you have such control and power where you are, regardless of what's going on outside the world. The mind that you're nurturing, the action that you're taking is always going to be up to you. This is really where a lot of magic and power is. And at the end of 2020, we're going to see, different groups of people, right? Those who are thriving, who've been taking action, who've been focusing, who've been really placing their attention and their decision-making on what matters and what's going to move them forward. And then other groups who maybe haven't been feeling so confident, who've been more observant, waiting, not sure of necessarily what to do, or having an idea and not acting on it. So successful people in all spheres have this willingness to be uncomfortable, this huge bias towards action, and are simply making decisions and making moves day by day, not waiting for permission from anybody else and not waiting for anything external market-wise to improve. And I am seeing this in the influencer world, and I'm already seeing a shift. Maybe you see it too. The shift of the influencers who are making moves, who are kind of making things happen, and those who are just a bit kind of more quiet or contemplative right now. If that's a specific business decision, that's one thing. That's cool, right? But if it's because of the fear of being uncomfortable is too much, then it's different. And we know immediately which is the one where we are in that, where we are specifically. So confidence, right? Confidence, competence loop. It's always going to be our decision. It's simply our willingness to be uncomfortable. The other thing that's important to know about confidence, especially in a tricky market or an uncertain market, is to know that it's really generous. Right? Often we never think about it this way. We often think confidence can be self-serving. And of course it is, and it should be, right? Because we're all leaders here, right? We're here to make our contribution and then to see the rewards of that in our life. But also confidence is generous in this quiet way, meaning if you're making moves as a leader, making decisions out there, having a voice, sharing your authentic opinion, whatever it may be, then, and knowing what that means for you, right? Focusing on what feels right for you as a leader, then it automatically kind of green lights more and more people to do it, right? We need real life role models. And those of us who can step forward courageously and take action, other people observe that. And it's inspiring, right? We don't inspire anybody by doing nothing, right? By having an opinion. That's a little different, right? But when we see people out there making moves, making decisions, making things happen, being willing to be uncomfortable, being willing to risk, being willing to even fail, right? In a lot of cases, that is very inspirational for anybody who is observing them, which is incredibly fun too, because when you think that confidence is generous, it makes you even more inclined to go there, because you know that the benefits aren't just for you, they're for everybody in your sphere. And what I know too is that people are paying more attention than you think, right? So often you'll make a move and you'll be like, oh, these people know about it, right? The people in your life who follow you, who are connected to you. But because of all the socials, it's amazing how many people actually have access to what it is that you're doing, what you're sharing, the moves that you're making, and who are silently paying attention. You'll never hear from these people. You'll never know that they're paying attention to you, but they are in a lot of cases. So when you can be confident, you're actually inspiring a whole lot of other people to become more confident too and to make more moves. Haven't you ever seen that, right? Like if somebody's announcing something bold or doing something new, you're like, oh, first we'll pay attention, and secondly think, I wonder what I could be doing. Is there something here potentially for me? So we can be the person that inspires then that question in others. So confidence, number one, right? And it's worth thinking, like, what's an area in your business, in your life, where you'd like to be more confident? And then think, am I willing to be more uncomfortable in that area? It's as simple as these questions. Where would I like to become more confident? And then am I willing to be uncomfortable in that area? And then what is the short-term exchange, right? What, a few minutes of discomfort, a couple of days of discomfort, for what potential long-term gain, right? And is it worth it? And in almost all cases, we do think that it's worth it, but we have to remember that that kind of short-term get through the discomfort is a step that we simply can't skip, right? It's the price that we pay for the success that we're welcoming in. And it's pretty awesome, because a lot of people aren't bold enough, right? Don't feel willing enough to have that negative emotion. So especially right now, if there are some moves that you want to make, or if you really want to press ahead, then it's going to be, it's a quieter time out there too, for a lot of different industries. So part two, intentional thinking. As a coach, the tool that we use the most, right, is, or the tool that we need to manage is the mind, right? Because our thoughts create our emotions create our actions create our entire life experience. And our thoughts, therefore, are the most important thing on earth, because they create everything. And often we think that our thoughts just, they're correct, right? They come into our mind and they're correct, but we're more than our thoughts, and our thoughts aren't necessarily true. And a very important tool that you can use, it's called the power of self-suggestion, or conscious auto-suggestion. This is actually coined by Napoleon Hill, who wrote Think and Grow Rich. And thought replacement is so easy, we just don't realize that it's accessible and it's something that we can do. So thought replacement, like right now, for example, could be really anything, any negative thought that you have around your business, around, making a move, moving forward. One could be, I've got a couple of examples here. Maybe a thought could be something like, I don't know how to do this, whatever it may be. A replacement could be, maybe I don't have to do this alone. One day at a time. Maybe look at this community that Maria has cultivated here. I'm sure there are so many communities in your life. People are willing to help, right? People are always willing to help. We also can allow people to help us in our business. If we need advice, if we need a collaboration, an opportunity, an introduction, people are so willing to help. I think that we forget that. And one way to also invite more of that in is to be the person who's also helping others. Maybe another thought could be, this happens all the time, even coaching people at all levels, I hear this. Someone will say something like, oh, this is going to be terrible, I might embarrass myself. A thought replacement would be, look, maybe I'll be a bit anxious, right? I can cope if I'm anxious. And look, the thing that I'm worrying about, it might not happen. In fact, I was okay last month at that other fill in the blank. So you always also want to be looking to your past for evidence of your own success, for evidence of feeling discomfort and moving forward anyway, feeling discomfort and it turning out well for you anyway, or you having a different or better result than you initially expected. Another one could be, I'm not good at this, it's hard. I think we all feel this, especially as business owners, in some aspect of our business. But a thought replacement could be, everything is hard before it's easy. Isn't that correct? I'm learning as I go and it's not my job to be perfect. So we really need to let ourselves off the hook sometimes. This is just known as just self-soothing, and it puts us in a far more creative space where when our mind is stressed, it shuts down. It's almost like we're drunk. We can't process the information that we're receiving or seeing, hearing. We can't process it clearly. And so when we can soothe our mind, become less stressed, right? Breathe, relax, even momentarily, our creative channels open up, right? Our problem solving channels open up. And this is what we need, right? This is what we need more than ever before. We need to access these parts of the brain that allow us to make good, enlightened, long-term decisions with all of the data, not short-term anxious decisions. So confidence, thought replacement. Whenever a panic thought comes to your mind, you can think, what is a thought that can soothe this? What is a better replacement thought? It's as simple as that. And once you do this frequently, right, you train yourself. It's almost like the backup thought, the more soothing thought comes to you immediately. Like it's almost just like there, it's always on demand, but it becomes available to you. And this is a life skill. When I interviewed Sarah Blakely, who's the founder of Spanx, she said that the only thing she considers her real full-time job is managing her energy, right? And she walks around, she's like, I walk around, and we know this woman has a $1 billion business. She's like, I walk around in almost like this positive bubble where you can't really get to me because my mind is so strong. And thought replacement is a huge technique that she uses, right? So panic thought, stress thought, it's like, okay, there's a problem, that's good. What can I solve? What will this teach me? What's the new level here? Because we only ever really have problems because there's something that so let me put it this way. You wouldn't have a problem in your business unless you had a business, right? You wouldn't have a problem with a customer unless you had customers. You wouldn't have a problem with your branding unless your branding meant something. Right? So all of this interpretation, all of these thought replacement strategies, they really work in your business and life. And if you ever observe any leader who you admire, really in any market, in any field, you will see their willingness to be uncomfortable and how strong their mental game is. You'll see them not use negative language about themselves, about others, about business. It's a consistent, trained outlook to see opportunity. And we can all do this using these methods, specifically thought replacement. When something comes to the mind, you question it, you say, okay, is this really true? Is this really a disaster? Or is there something for me to learn here? Is there something valuable here that I can take to grow? Is there something, is there something I'm learning that this experience is teaching me? So confidence, thought replacement. And then the third thing, hopefully I'm okay with time, Maria. The third thing is effort, right? We can always control our effort. No matter where we are, right, in business, no matter the situation, our decision, right, to invest our energy, to find new opportunities, to almost to allow ourselves, right, to take action, to focus, to know that, as business owners, right, influencers, whatever we call ourselves, our job is to make an impact, right? That's why we all kind of went into business. It's why we're all here. It's because we want to make an impact and make it our contribution. And then that's going to then come through our effort, right? And not making it really about us, right? But thinking, who is I serve? What value do I add? What are my products and services, etc. And then thinking, okay, how can what effort can I apply in terms of really dialing that up and making that available to the people who need me, the people who can benefit from what it is that I have to offer. And as business owners, I think that sometimes we forget, it's very easy to forget that that's really why we're all here. Like that's our job. It's to make our contribution, a big life of contribution. And where therefore is that contribution going to come from, right? It's going to come from our effort. And the good news is, once you have your confidence, right, in the mix, when you're constantly practicing new things, being willing to experience negative emotion, trying more, risking more, being more bold, right? Once you're taking more confident action, once you have thought replacement techniques, even if it's just one or two more helpful thoughts that are soothing your anxious or panic or future tripping thoughts, whatever they may be, once you have those in place, right, it's a perfect marriage, then the effort piece becomes easy, right? The effort piece. Have you ever noticed that when you're just feeling confident, when you're feeling more grounded and steady, taking any action becomes easy? It almost feels like fun, like you almost can't do it soon enough, right? This is the mental state, the primed mental state that leaders need. right? And only we can do it. No one can give it to us. No one can also take it from us, which is very positive. But the effort piece becomes easy. And effort, right? Effort being fueled by our mental game being strong, and us, frankly, taking control of our mind and being able to have these kind of very self-directed thoughts. We then put ourselves in this prime position to take action. And in terms of taking action, there are a couple of things that I've been sharing right now with different groups, right? So different companies, different agencies, different teams. I've been suggesting 24-hour challenges, right? Because there's nothing like pulling the trigger on something quickly to first of all get us, energized and moving, but also to see results quickly, right? Results are very encouraging. And when we take action, there's always some form of result. Even if it's not the result we want, it's still information. And so there are a couple of different challenges that I've been suggesting, and I'd like to share a couple with you. And you can maybe select which one kind of feels right for you in your business, in your life right now. But 24 hours. So here it's 8 a.m. So by 8 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow, whatever, I think that's 1 p.m. for you, Maria. But here are the challenges that have been working the best. I've tried a few, and this is the feedback that I've had, that these are the most encouraging. So the first is to think upon this and then institute it within 24 hours. The question is, what's the one thing I can do this week that'll make everything else either easier or unnecessary? We know what this is in a lot of cases immediately, right? Think and then institute within 24 hours, right? What's one thing that I can do right now that will make everything else either easier or unnecessary? What is it? This is such a good, it's not my question. This is an old coaching question. What's one thing that I can do right now that'll make everything else either easier or unnecessary? Great challenge. Often you kind of know immediately what it is. It's often something that we've been putting off. We think maybe it's not so bad. We'll wait, there'll be a better time. The time is now. 24 hours. What's one thing that you can change? One thing that you can do that'll make everything else either easier or unnecessary. The other challenge is more of a sales challenge, which some teams love if they're sellers, Maria, which is simply, it's called the 555, super easy and fun. And I love to do this, even if I'm, even just not for a challenge, but just for fun a lot of the days, is the 555, which is 5 calls, 5 emails, 5 social email reach outs within 24 hours. So that, imagine if you did 15 reach outs per day, 5 days a week, what that would mean over the course of 6 months, right? Over even just the second part of 2020. This 555 system, it's a salesperson's dream, and we're all salespeople, right? Whether or not sales is in your title, we're all salespeople, right? To sell is human. And so this 555 technique is also an awesome challenge. So by 8 a.m. tomorrow or 1 p.m. London time, 5 calls, 5 emails, and 5 social media reach outs to people you want to collaborate with, sell to, work with, partner with, whatever it may be. Just 15 new reach outs within 24 hours. So I could go long, Maria, but hopefully that's a helpful overview of what's working right now and your permission to move forward.
It's fantastic. I'm already thinking about what's important for me right now. There's tough things that I can do. How do I make myself uncomfortable?
It's such a good question. And I mean, I was thinking this yesterday myself, and there's a really big influencer that I want to reach out to. He's an author. And that's my goal for today. I'm reaching out to him today.
I love it. Let me know how you get on.
I will. It's going to work out because there's no other choice.
There's no choice, exactly. You've got the sun behind you and this chat done, so everything's on your side.
Yes.
That's great. Susie, thanks so much, and I really appreciate you getting up so early, and it's just been so lovely to see you.
You too.
Thank you. That's kind of it for us. Well, we should be stopping, but actually Natalie had said she really wanted to do just a couple of minutes. Now, for anybody who wants to come back, this is she's going to talk about the model that she's releasing later this year. Let me just unmute, see if she's there. You're good. Hello.
Hello. Hey. Yeah.
Okay.
It just takes 2 minutes to describe these models. Thank you for your question. And yes, I decided, that during our lockdown in Ukraine, we are sitting with our team and decided to create the test, which will define your personal brand model based on your psychological and biological competence of a person. It's really important because nowadays we can check a lot of, find a lot of information on the internet, but it's all general about how to become influencer, how to engage people, but it is all like general information. And sometimes when our clients come to our agency, they ask, but is it appropriate for me? I don't like do this, or I don't like do this, or for example, it is not comfortable for me to have a public speaking or webinars. And in this case, I cannot build my personal brand. Of course, no, our answer. And when our clients come to our agency, we always have interview with them and this like a small discussion with a psychologist who help us to define their personal, the model of personal branding. And that's why we decided to create a disruptive test, which will afford each person to define this model. And we are launching this test in September, and you are the first who are like get this information. And I can share my screen and show these 5 models, and I will send you after.
Great.
Yes, sorry. Is it okay or no?
Ta-da!
Ta-da!
Yes.
Everything is okay, yeah?
Yeah.
So we have just 5 models. I try to show full screen.
Yeah.
It's always takes time. Okay, yeah. I'm a brand, I'm a maker, I'm a connector, I'm HR brand, and I'm a project. And I ask you to share with your listener this information because this will help them to define content appropriate for their psychological and nervous system. You know, that if you are, for example, after test, if you have a definition that you are a brand, you can go directly and monetize your personality. You can be a blogger because it's like good, really good for your personality. And for example, if you are I'm a project model, it's better to have an inbound marketer, and because your project speaks for you, and as people who likes creating great projects, but they prefer to stay out behind these projects. That's why we're like making a proposal for all people to make this test, and after to define define their models, they can use appropriate content and create the easiest strategy for their personal brand. That's all. I can send you more details about this concept because, as I see, we don't have a time, and we need to stop share. Okay.
That was brilliant. It's really interesting. It's quite exciting to see where it's going. Definitely share with me, and I'll put it out to everybody who attended to see if they'd like to hear more.
Yeah.
I'd like to say a huge thank you to all of our speakers, Nat and Dudley, and I'd like to say thanks to Chris and Susie, and let's say thanks to Kat and Jay, and of course Scott, and to all of you guys who have been listening. So thank you very much. We do have the moral of the story, our next webinar, but I'll send you that afterwards. And I wish you all a fantastic day. Thank you. Bye.